What's up, everybody? Well, today I am here to bring to you another vacuum that's in my vacuum collection. And yes, it is another Hoover Elite. I'm sure a lot of people know by now, but for those of you who are just tuning in or who just clicked on this video, or who even watch my videos without checking source material, probably should know that my favorite vacuum is the Hoover Elite. They are just quite nostalgic for me, and I grew up with a lot of them when I was little. I am from the 90s after all, 96 to be exact. But I just love them. I don't know what it is, but I've always liked to snatch one up whenever a good looking one comes across my path. And what I have is a Hoover Elite Supreme. This is pretty much the Elite Supreme. That's it. It's pretty much a name with an actual original name of the lineup of vacuums, and it doesn't have some weirdo name that was slapped on from another Hoover cleaner in the past. But this is basically the hard bag Hoover Elite back then. And Supreme was basically mean that this was a higher end model, being that it is a hard bag cover and all. Which the hard bag Elites were basically made to basically be the high end version and try to look like a bypass vacuum when it's still a direct air. So that's kind of interesting when Hoover went by this design, but I have a very big soft side for hard bag Hoover Elites because I grew up with mostly them. Although I did have some soft bag cleaners here and there that popped up in my childhood, but I've used more hard bag ones than I have soft bag. And this is basically one of the early examples of the Elite Supreme. This is model U5035. Some people may remember I used to own a U5043, which that was essentially had a little bit different shade of green that was almost kind of a bluish color. This one is a little bit more green, but it's kind of like a dark seafoam green versus the U5043 that I had. I do know that model at the time was sold new at Kmart. Not too sure where this one was sold new at, but I've always liked this one for one, the color, and this one for one nice touch of detail that they did in early models of the Elite that I'm going to go over later in the video. But for now, let's go ahead and give a walkthrough of the cleaner. The one thing I do love about this is that this is one of the early models of the Elite lineup that still had the gray body instead of the black body that they would later go to in later years. I'm not too sure if it was to save money or to make it look a little bit more modern, but I've always loved how old school looking these Elites look with the gray body. And this does have that little block off plate for some hard bag models that would have come with a scent tablet right up there. This one was just capped off from the factory, very similar to what the U5043 was. And it doesn't even have the vents on the top, which I find very interesting, because usually a lot of these hard bag Elites would have vents on the top, and of course they have to have them on the side to ventilate this thing, otherwise it's essentially just blocking off suction and it won't have as much airflow. And this just was before they put the vents on the top, which I kind of like this because it's all smoothed out and it doesn't look obvious. But right down here we do have your Elite Supreme lettering on the front there. It is energy efficient, 99% filtration. To open the bag, you simply just lift this latch and it pulls off like so. And inside is your Hoover Type A bag. This is a generic paper bag or HEPA cloth bag for increased filtration, Filters out much better than even the genuine paper bags do of the time. So, and I also love how large these Type A's are. You can pack so much dirt into one of these things before you need to change them out. So let's go ahead and put the bag door back on. Down here you do have your stair cleaning handle that you can hold right here to use the vacuum to clean on carpeted stairs if you so desire. And down here is all the Hoover marketing labels on the top of the hood. You do have your carpet height selection on the front here. It is a 4-position. So you can go from low to high for a pile of your carpet. I always leave it on the middle setting for the pile of this carpet. You have your Hoover symbol right up front here, and Hoover lettering down here. The one thing I do like on these green models is that they do have these little like green pinstriping on the front there. That's a little bit different shade of green, so it kind of flows into the color of the vacuum. You do have brushed edge cleaning on both sides. And one thing I do love about this particular model is this is before the days when Hoover outlined the cleaning effectiveness per amp and put a little pinstripe around the labeling, which I kind of like that this has without it. So the cleaning effectiveness per amp, which is rated at 17 for this model, which this is just nothing but Hoover's famous marketing technique back then to make high-end models look prettier on the shelves while also giving them a higher price tag. It's just so a lot of consumers will gravitate toward the higher end vacuums when really there's just nothing different about them. The only difference you get with these Elites are the kind of brush roll it has, and it's either a soft bag or a hard bag like this. You do have your little attachment door right here that you flip up to attach your cleaning tools to use onboard tools, which are mounted on the side right here. You do have your single extension wand right here, your hose that's mounted on the side right here. This is the plastic mounted hose. There were higher end models that did have a stretch hose. And on the back you do have your upholstery tool, your crevice tool, and your dusting brush. And right on the back you do have your gray colored power cord, which is an interesting thing on this model, is before they moved to the black cord in later years, which is pretty nice. It kind of gives it a nice vintage look. The cord is in almost nearly mint condition. I say almost because unfortunately I know there probably was a little cut or tear in it, but there's one detail I just noticed in the cord is that it has the Hoover markings on it, which I don't know if you could see, but there it is right there. There's little Hoover markings right there. So that's just very nice touch of detail on the cords back then. So let's go ahead and flip this thing down below to show you the brush roll that's in it. This is the dual row brush roll. It is the full length of bristles. So you do have a complete length of bristles for excellent cleaning performance, and this does do great as a result. As the 4-wire bottom plate versus the 3-bar one on the low end models that don't leave as much good of lines compared to these. The bristles are very, very stiff. This one does have a little bit of wear on it. As you can see, the bristles don't stick out as far as they used to, but they still stick out a good length, so I'm not entirely too worried about it. But that is an unfortunate thing to happen to these brush rolls, is that they do wear out over time. And let's go ahead and turn this thing on its back to show you the model number. It is the Hoover Cleaner model U5035-930, 120 volts, 60 hertz, 7.2 amps. And the bag type is A. Belt type is the 38528-027. It is now known as 38528-040. It's just updated part number and a little bit updated belt too. The dash 040 belts usually are a little bit wider than the 027 belts, so they will definitely have better torque to the brush roll than these 027s will. So that's one nice update that Hoover did over time. And to serial date these, for those of you who don't know how to serial date these older Hoovers, this is not just applying for Elites. A lot of other Hoovers, at least in the North Canton plant, are serial this way, at least after 1988. The first two digits decode the month of manufacturing. The third and fourth will decode the year. So 07 of 93 means this was manufactured in July of 1993 by the Hoover Company of North Canton, Ohio, for household use only, made in the USA. That is what I love about these old Hoovers, is that they are US made. And they're not as good built as some of the vacuums today's day and age. And so let's go ahead and release the power cord, which I should say is pretty good, decent length cord. So I think it's got to at least be in the 30-foot range, so that is one nice thing to have. You can cover quite a bit of ground before having to stop and change plugs. So let's go ahead and plug this guy in. And then we will go ahead and turn this thing on and give you a demo of it running. So power switch is down on the side of the cleaner, typical Hoover Elite, and it's a plastic rod that runs down into where the main rocker switch is in the valley of the motor. One more thing I should point out with these gray-bodied Elites is that the power switch on this is actually colored in black instead of red like they would do in the black-bodied Elites, which is one nice thing they did back then. Although I do like the black-bodied ones with the red switches better. I kind of like the black switch color in the gray bodies as well. But so now let's go ahead and show you this thing running. Typical Elite fashion, this thing is pretty loud when it's running, so headphone users, I would advise turning down your volume for this portion of the video. So here we go. Very nice. And before we end the video, let's go ahead and demonstrate the attachments that this has on board. So let's just remove the hose from the rack. And then simply lift up this little attachment door, and then the hose just pops down in like that. Now, because this vacuum is direct air, I would not expect miracle suction out of this thing. Direct air vacuums are known to produce more airflow than they do suction, so tool performance is not going to be great. Reattach it. Just make sure this back part is locked down in, and then just reattach the hose to the clamps on the side. And there you go. Well, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this video on the Hoover Elite Supreme. Be sure and stay tuned, and don't forget to like, rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.